If they go check out your profile and they don't know what it is that you do, how you can serve them, and why they should choose you, then that's a wasted opportunity. And what we need to remember is when people are on social media, that they're on speed. They are like zooming by so quickly that you've got seconds to get their attention. And if you haven't, they've just moved on to the next shiny thing.
Louise, thank you so much for joining me on the Let's Talk Business podcast.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm delighted to be here.
So today's topic is a topic that we may have covered in the past in bits and pieces, but I think it's time to have a fresh conversation about the power of social media for businesses. And who better than having somebody on the show than you? So thank you so much for making the time to come on the show.
It's my pleasure.
So for our listeners that don't know anything about you or don't know your story, how you got involved in social media, tell us a little bit about the backstory.
Yeah, so I would love to tell you that getting into social media and digital marketing was a strategic move, Manny, but it wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
I studied service marketing in college, so I always loved service marketing. Was an area that I really was always interested in. I grew up in a seaside village, so I worked in the service industry from a very early age. In the 80s in Ireland, you could start working, well, you probably weren't supposed to, but we were all working from early teens. And it gave us a great work ethos and a great insight into the industry before we started studying anything to do with service marketing. When I left college, I got a graduate position in a company called EDI Factory. At the time, I was more interested in the fact that it was a marketing position and I didn't really listen to the term EDI. So I was walking into this company expecting that there was going to be producing this product called EDI and I was just going to be marketing it all over the world. But in fact, EDI is electronic data interchange. And what I had walked into was one of Ireland's earliest e-commerce businesses. And in fact, it was so early on that the term e-commerce and e-business weren't even being used. So it was it was a wonderful move for me, even though I didn't recognize it at the time. I was the only female in the company and I was the only non-techie in the company. And so it was really difficult to navigate those first early few months because I didn't know anything about what they called the paperless office. And what I found about working in that company was that when I got there, I like trying to read the literature of the company was so difficult because it was all written by techies. And trying to really get my head around what they did and what they did for the customer was so difficult too. But what I found was that I had a real aptitude for all that technical stuff. And what I found was that I was able to understand, I used to just ask so many questions until I understood it. And then I could write the brochures, the sales letters, the business cards, the business proposal in a way that the customers actually understood what the benefit was to them and why they should buy the solutions. And I suppose when I look at it now, that's what I do to this day. I love all the technical stuff. I love getting in behind how ads work, how social media works, how email works, how search engine optimization works. And then in my business, we have an agency where people can outsource their digital marketing to us, but then I have an academy where I train. And because I do, I'm getting my hands dirty every day of the week, actually involved in campaigns. I can explain it in my academy in a way to people that they can easily implement it. So that's how I got into the whole digital marketing area. It was completely by chance. It was probably one of the best moves that I ever did, even though I didn't realize it at the time.
Got it. So let me start with the overarching question that people have. We know in business there's something called the shiny object syndrome, which means every shiny object we turn to say, forget about what we're doing now, or forget about what's working, let's test this new thing. Social media, when it started off years ago, when some of those platforms started, it was for sure the shiny object syndrome. There's still some sort of level of shiny object syndrome as new features come out, new platforms come out, and so on and so forth. What is your overarching suggestion for businesses how to approach mediums? We'll talk soon which type of businesses are more immune to different types of social media platforms, but it's just in general how to look at it. Think about a average business company that has, let's say, a marketing budget, a marketing person or people, whatever it is. How much and how frequent do they have to pay attention to platforms or new platforms?
So for me, it's all about the bottom line. It's all about the results. So I hear what you're saying about the shiny new thing, and I think sometimes people get a bit, they lose their focus a bit, thinking about the shiny new thing and not why they're actually using it. I encounter a lot of businesses and they're using social media and they're busy using social media, but they're absolutely getting no quantifiable results from it. And what I say to people is that if what you're doing on social media isn't leading to inquiries, leads, or sales, then you need to rethink it and do something totally. You need to change up your strategy. So for me, each one of those different social media channels, they're just channels. We were talking a few minutes ago about LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram. If they all disappeared in the morning, we would just start using different channels. And you just have to have a strategy to allow you to use them in a way that doesn't take up too much time, takes up as much time as it needs to, but that it's also results driven. That's the most
Hmm.
important thing.
I think what you just said is such an important factor. Is in order to make it into a viable channel for you versus a shiny object is if it's results driven. That's a very important factor. And I think I remember the earlier years of social media when people were just knocking on people's door and saying, okay, there's the new thing, social media for $300. I can manage your channels and I could just post stuff all day long. Business owners were very happy they saw posts, but they didn't see the results. And I think people that are mastering it, and we'll talk about in this conversation, I want to go in depth on a little bit on the content strategy and what would lead to results. But I think this is a very important point. People should always, and this is every marketing. We're going to be talking about social media, but I think from our perspective, we're a branding and marketing agency. We always tell our clients that just because you did it once or twice or 5 times, you just don't take this as a given. You always have to reevaluate to see if still fits with your objective and the bottom line. It brings you the results. So I want to ask you another fundamental question, which is something that I know a lot of businesses are wrestling with, and then obviously we'll also get into some of the details. But from a fundamental perspective, this is something that I've heard different opinions by different experts in social media, and I would love to hear your take, which is who should be the voice on social media? Should it be the business as a business entity in their own voice and tone of the business versus should it be an individual showing their expertise as part of the business? Now, when you're a coach, a consultant, and you're anything in that space, an attorney, it's somewhat easier because you're the company is you, and therefore the voice is pretty much aligned. Where it starts getting a challenge is when the company has maybe a broader voice than an individual voice, when the person that needs to speak on social media maybe just could be just an employee of the company, and 3 years down the road, they might not even be with the company. What is your approach to social media when it comes to this question?
Oh, yes, that's a really good question. For smaller businesses, as you've just pointed out, so for solopreneurs, it's really easy. Like they're the voice, they're the face of the business, they're the voice of the business. It's pretty much them. Okay. Now, sometimes solopreneurs, they actually don't get that. And they don't realize that it is really important that they are the face of the business and they do put their face out there and that they don't just get somebody to do a whole load of generic social media posts for them that could belong to any organization. So that's important. So then you see the larger organizations, like the really large organizations, and they're paying influencers to be the face and the voice of their business. And that person must align, obviously, with the brand values of that organization. And the reason they're doing that is because the board of directors, because they're faceless, we don't know who they are, like with these large brands. So they're paying like movie stars and rock stars to be the face of their business and to be the brand ambassadors for them. Okay. And then in between, you have the you have companies who have employees. Now, it's perfectly fine to have the employees show up, and it is important, in fact, that they are represented throughout the social media, especially if they are the face of the business, especially if the customer, potential customer, is going to be engaging with these people. Yeah, yes, it's important to have them on the social media. But what's important is that as well, that an individual one individual doesn't, if you like, take over the space so much that they become larger than the brand itself. So that's something that brands would need to manage to make sure that the people within their organization don't become larger than the brand themselves. So if they then leave the organization, that the brand suffers. So that's the kind of at a top level approach I would take to it.
Hmm. So let's talk about. I know that you categorize businesses into three categories of more or less the businesses. Talk about how you would categorize the categories of business, different types of businesses, and then let's dive into some of the content strategies and how to really utilize social media to their benefit.
So I regularly encounter what I say three different categories of business people when it comes to social media. And I say social media, it's digital marketing because it's always broader than social media.
Correct.
The first category is the people with their head in the sand. So these are people who say, "Gosh, I know I should be doing something on social media, but I hate it." Sometimes they say, "I hate it. I don't want to be on it." You have that, or you have other people who go, "I tried it. I tried it. I went on 3 times last year and it didn't work, so I didn't do it anymore." And then you have other people who are just procrastinating and say, "I must do it and I must do it," but they just haven't. So that's category A. They're just head in the sand, ignoring social media all the time or some of the time. Category B would be people who spend a lot of time on social media. They're there, they're showing up regularly, they're posting, but they're not getting results in terms of sales and leads. Okay. And to give you some feedback. So anytime I do a seminar or anytime I do a webinar or anytime I'm on stage, I generally poll people, and over like 50 to 60% of people always fall into that category where they can be really busy on social media, but it's not generating results. And so that can be incredibly frustrating as well if you're falling into that category. And then the third category of people these are people who just want to show up when there's something to sell and they just want to use paid ads. So they don't want to post organically. They don't want to spend time on social media. They just want to show up when they've got something to sell. So something nice and shiny, then they're going to get some budget and they just want to use it. And oftentimes a lot of the time I see people running the wrong types of ads. And as a result, they tend to waste their budget. Okay. And that can
Wow.
leave them very frustrated as well. I say to people, like, throughout the years, I have developed a 6-step approach to using social media and digital marketing. And when I'm explaining to people, do they identify more as category A, more as category B, or more category C? So depending on how you identify, depends on what stage of the 6-step system you need to focus on.
Oh, wow.
Okay,
So let me, before we get into the 6 steps, if I hope you'll be able to share with us the
of course.
process on the 3 types of people. I think it's very well categorized because sometimes you see the people on certain social media platforms and they show up every single day and they're grinding it, but ultimately they're not yielding results. And those are the people that you could see for a certain period of time. They're so active and all of a sudden they vanish and then they're back active because guess what, if they see the results, they don't vanish. They vanish because they've been committed to posting. And I think a lot of people make that commitment. Well, I'm going to start posting on social media, but they fail to plan objectively what they want to get out of it and what the content strategy will be and everything like that. Yes, they're giving commitment and they're getting so excited and they're committed every single day, 30 days of posting or whatever it is, but they fail to plan. And if you fail to plan, it's a plan to fail, so to speak. So I'm happy you categorized in these 3 categories. And I think our listeners could definitely find themselves in one of those 3 buckets.
Absolutely. Yes.
So let's talk about the 6-step system.
Yeah. So I say to people, if you've been ignoring social media, if you've been starting and stopping, or if you've been creating content and you're not getting results, you need to start at step 1. Step 1 in my 6-step system is, as you've just pointed out there, it's about laying the foundations. So it's for making sure that whatever platform you're going to use, that if you're going to be driving people eventually to your website or to your landing pages, that you set up your tracking. Okay, so first of all, you get the foundations place, you make sure all your tracking, all your analytics are in place and tracking accurately. You also make sure that you sit down and look at your business goals, okay? And that you set your goals for what you want to get from using your social media, your digital marketing activities. So everything that you do must be driven by these goals, okay? And again, if you're just showing up on social media, but it's not linking back to, as you said, a clear, definite, smart goal or objective, then you're never going to be totally effective. And then that's the kind of step 1 is to set your goals. It's also in step 1, it's to be very clear on what it is that you're selling. Okay. Now, this is really important if you're selling a service. Okay. If you're selling a product, you know what the product is, you know what the price is, you may have done your competitive analysis, all of that. If you're selling a service, again, to be very clear, are you selling one-to-one consult? Is it consultancy? Is it one-to-one coaching? Is it group coaching? Is it a mastermind? What is it? You need to be really clear on that before you start taking to the social media and producing content. So that's just all in step one. It's laying the foundations. Step two then is following on from that is to profile your target audience in a really deep and meaningful way. So in my experience, lots of businesses, they just are skimming the surface when it comes to profiling their customers. So understanding at a deep level what their pain points are, what their needs, their desires, what are their dreams, what's holding them back, what so to really understand everything that's going to motivate the ideal customer and what's going to encourage them to take action.
Yeah, I think I just add on the number two, which is so important. And I think we've seen so many people that come to us for branding and marketing, and they're failed to identify who the target market is. And a lot of times it comes because people think that if I profile my customer, I cannot accept money from anybody that's not in that profile fit. They don't realize that you could still take money from anybody. The question is, where are you spending your effort on getting? Where are you spending your marketing effort? And I think when people start hearing it this way, they say, "Oh, then I'm ready to profile my customers." And like that's a challenge. People think that the second I say that my customers are only people that have this pain point or this size of a company, that means that if somebody is just about under the threshold or just about over the threshold, I can't do business with. You could continue to do it if you want. However, where do you spend your effort to make sure that your message resonates with the crowd? It's in that sweet spot. And I think I just wanted to add that because I've seen this as the reason why people are afraid to profile.
Absolutely. And again, just to add to what you're saying there, Many, by truly understanding in step one, when you've understood what your program is or what your mastermind or whatever it is you really want to sell, step two, you're just profiling who you're selling it to. By then understanding their pain points, the language they use, the terminology that they respond to, that's then going to help you with your copywriting for your websites, for your brochures, for your social media posts, for your blog posts, for your emails, for your ads. Okay, that's going to lead on. So step two is profiling the customer. Step three then is optimizing. So it's about taking what you've learned in step one about your goals and what you're selling, taking also what you've learned in step two about your profiling your customers, and making sure that your websites, your landing pages, your social media channels are all optimized and they are clearly communicating your core messages. Okay. So
Mhm.
if you have been one of the people who have just been really busy on social media posting content, chances are you might have skipped step one, step two, and step three. And that could be the reason that if you're busy on social media and you are getting people's attention, you are getting people's attention if you're busy, if you're out there. But when they get your attention and they go to check out, because the first thing they do is, let's say you're on LinkedIn and you get their attention, they go check out your profile. Or let's say you're on Instagram and you get their attention through a post or an ad, they go check out your profile. And same thing on Facebook and same thing on whatever channel that you're on. But if they go check out your profile and they don't know what it is that you do, how you can serve them, and why they should choose you, then that's a wasted opportunity. And what we need to remember is when people are on social media that they're on speed. They are like zooming by so quickly that you've got seconds to get their attention. And if you haven't, they've just moved on to the next shiny thing.
Yeah, I, I'm guilty myself. Sometimes I will scroll social media and I just caught my eye and I say, let me go back to that. And all of a sudden it's not even there anymore. Like I can't even find what I just started seeing. Like that's how fast you scroll through social media.
It's so true. So that's step one, step two, step three, then is the optimization. Step four, then is the content. So the content, of course, is important. And what is content? Content is social media posts, is your blog content, it is your email content, it is your lead magnets, it's your landing pages. That's your content, right? So it's really important that the content strategy that you create is something that is aligned with your goals, aligned with the programs you're selling, aligned with obviously to get the attention of your ideal customer. So the content, of course, is extremely important, which is step four. Step five then is paid ads. So if you've just been my third category of person and you've just been skipping through straight to ads, chances are you've skipped one, step two, step three, and step four. You just jumped to five. And that's why five doesn't work by itself. Okay. So for anything to truly work, you need to use organic and paid, because what works is showing up consistently on message. and then augmenting that organic reach with paid reach, which is what you're doing with your ads. I always say that there's three benefits from running paid ads. First of all, there's the direct benefit. So you run an ad for an event, a webinar, a lead magnet, whatever it is, and you get the people who sign up. That's your direct benefit. Then you get the indirect benefit. So let's say I'm running a webinar and people sign up for the webinar, but then somebody contacts me and say, actually, I want you to do some in-house consultancy. I saw your ad. I don't want what's in the ad, but I want this instead. There's your indirect benefit. And then the third benefit is the future benefit. It's all the people that came across you for the first time. And so, oh, that's really interesting. I'm not ready for that yet, but I'm going to follow this person. I'm going to keep an eye on them. And so there's the benefits that you get from your paid promotions. So if you haven't been using any paid promotions on social media, particularly if you're using Facebook and Instagram, TikTok, then that's something you need to look at. LinkedIn is a little bit more, is a little different. So that's step 5 of the 6-step system is paid ads. And then step 6 is evaluating performance and using that to inform future campaigns. Because the world is always changing. Our external environment is always changing. Our customers are always changing. The economy is always changing. We ourselves are always changing and evolving. So what's in our control is always changing. What's out of our control is always changing. So what strategies that we used 6 months ago or 12 months ago don't necessarily work now. And the only way that you know that is to tune into everything that you're doing and to use that to inform your future campaigns.
Hmm. A lot of the people that are listening to the show, as we mentioned before we went live, is probably use LinkedIn the most as a personal platform to share content on in their category or show their expertise in what they offer. I guess my question on that is when it comes to one of the things we mentioned, I think one of the most important parts is the profiling your customers. Where do you see this playing a role in the actual content creation?
So the content, so I have when it comes to social media content, I tend to talk about content under 4 different categories, 4 different content pillars. So the first content pillar would be awareness content. So awareness content is content where you're not selling, you're not giving advice, you're simply connecting with another person at a human level. So that could be, obviously, that content needs to be authentic to you. So for me, that awareness content can sometimes be if I'm on the beach, I live right beside a beach. And if I'm just on the beach taking a walk with a dog and I'm having some time out, I might just post that and say, chilling this morning, this is where I am. And that's me connecting. I'm not selling, I'm not giving advice. That feels comfortable for me. I'm happy to share that level of content. And at the same time, nobody really knows anything too much about me personally. Okay. So everybody should find a kind of awareness content which they feel comfortable with promoting because it's the easiest content to promote. And guess what? It's the content that always performs the best. So my little dog, I have a lovely little Bichon Frise, outperforms me every single time on social media because people love to see a little bit about you, a little bit behind the scenes about you. So that's your awareness content. And every organization at every level should be looking at the awareness content that they can produce. The second category of content or content pillar would be like your expert content. So this is the content where you're positioning yourself as an expert in the eyes of your ideal customer. So of course, when you've profiled your ideal customer and you know the pain points that they have, what's bugging them at the moment, how you can help them at the moment, and how that leads into what you're selling, then you can create content that is going to impress them and is going to warm them up. So that's really important. And in my experience, that expert content can be evergreen. It can be content that you bring out every year. So you may have 40 pieces of really good expert content in the year that you can reuse over and over again. Okay. If you look at it
Hmm.
like that, probably even less than that, because you can probably share the same piece of expert content 2 or 3 times a year because people won't even remember that they've seen it, to be honest. So that's your expert content. Then your sales content is content where you're looking for leads, or maybe you're running a webinar, running a lead magnet, driving people to your OVO, whatever that is. That's your sales content. And then your advocate content is content produced by your most loyal customers. So they're your testimonials, your case studies, any third-party endorsements in your brand. So if you're featured on somebody's podcast, or if you're featured in the local newspaper, local radio station, that's a third-party endorsement. So that kind of would be your advocate content. So we tend to organize our social media, our content under those four content pillars.
Got it. So let me ask you when that's because one of the products that you have and you authored the book, this the social media content planner. So just which basically planning out the full social media. I guess my question is a lot of people they overthink their content as well because we see this where it has to be so picture perfect. They can't post something that's a little raw and not fully flushed out. And therefore, they fall into the other category you said that they procrastinate. So nothing is being posted because it has to be picture perfect. And then you have people that's why they don't have a content planner because they want to show up, they want to put stuff and stuff like that. So I guess what is a healthy mix of content if somebody creates that, uses your social media content planner and starts planning out the content?
It really depends on what's happening in the business at that given time. So let's say you have somebody coming up to a product launch, but they're launching a new mastermind, launching a new coaching program. The content's going to look very different 2 or 3 weeks in the lead up to that than it will be if there's no launch going on at that time.
Yep.
There's no, I can't give this any formula. It really depends on what's happening in the business and what their goals are and how far away those sales dates are,
Mhm.
all
But
that.
let's if you don't mind, let's use an example. Let's say somebody sells payroll services. Okay, so they have a small payroll company. So it's not like they're not gearing up to a launch. They don't have any educational products. They're just a service, and they solve a pain point for a particular client base. So let's say somebody listening to this show now and wants to take action. Okay, so they are experts in the payroll services and why a company needs it and how they could have better systems and processes if they use an outsourced company versus trying to do themselves. And this salesperson, this business owner is trying to say, you know what, let me start using social media for my advantage.
But that's exactly the type of company who should be looking at having a free webinar or a mini summit or an audio summit, or because that if you're selling a service, sometimes you can be busy week in, week out creating amazing content, but then you never get to the point where you say to the customer, do you want to do business with me? And so sometimes having a quarterly, maybe once a quarter, or maybe it's once a year, maybe it's once a month, you have an event where you create an excitement. You get people into a room, you get expert speakers in, or maybe you are the expert speaker. And then at the end of it all, you say to them, here, this is why you need to do business with me. And here's how you book a call. Let's have a chat.
Right.
So yeah, so and I think that's what people fail to miss is that they miss the fact that you could be forever and a day creating amazing content, but you have to get people over the line. So my favorite, we have an agency, as I said as well, where we create strategies and we implement them for companies. And my favorite type of business that comes in is the people who come in and go, we've been really busy, but we just haven't generated leads. Because I know that if I run an event for them, that they're just going to be blown away with the results because they've already built up the brand awareness. They just haven't capitalized on it.
Got it. Got it. So you're saying that no business owners should be ignoring putting out the educational content, even they're like a very subtle, just selling a service or a product.
It depends. So let's say you might have somebody in like a hotel and the tourism sector. They're pretty images all year round of different sunlight, sunsets and sunrises and different seasons. That will be enough sometimes just to engage people and get them to engaging with the content and it perform well. So there, the odd time they could maybe give a little bit of advice, but it's not so important to
Hmm.
them. Whereas in other sectors where you would struggle to find pretty images, it makes more sense that you would be producing more expert content.
Hmm.
So for me, like that's I know I post a photograph of the dog every now and then, but I mainly give advice content where I'm offering advice to my ideal customer.
Let me ask you, as far as in channels and platforms in general, are you a believer that rather master one versus being all over the place? Because we know that every platform has its own way of how content is consumed. It's not just push it out the same piece of content across all the different platforms. In general, when somebody is limited budget or limited time and resources, rather master one of those platforms or rather just try to have a little bit of content across all the platforms?
See, here's the thing. I think that people don't repurpose their content enough. So if you have one piece of really good meaty advice content, who's not to say that you couldn't create a reel from it, or you couldn't create a blog from it, or you couldn't create a carousel images, let's say, which would work well on LinkedIn. I'm all about using the social media channels that are going to give me the best results.
Mhm.
That's what I'm all about. And I'm saying to a client, like, if they tell me who they're targeting, I will say, you know what, this is where we're going to start. And then we'll take it from there. So unfortunately, we as the business owners don't get to decide that. It's
Yeah.
actually our customers decide where we hang out, because if we have to reach our customer, that's where we are. So actually, I just did an analysis with a client today over a campaign that we ran it was on social media. And it was an organic campaign for a small business. And they're all about the Instagram. They're all about the Instagram. And when we looked at the results on social media, we put the same effort into both Instagram and Facebook. This is just an example. And the Instagram return was something like 40,000, and the Facebook return in terms of reach, and the Facebook return was like 350,000,
Oh, wow.
or more or less the same effort. So when you talk about shiny new things, it's really important that you don't let what people are talking about or what's shiny at that moment influence you. You let your customers influence you, and after that, you let the statistics from your campaign influence your next move.
Yeah, this is so important. This has been great. Where could people find out more about you and what you do?
Yeah, so you can find me at sellonsocial.media. That's my website. But I hang out on social media under Sell on Social M. So that's Sell as SELL on Social M. I'm also, at the end of November, launching my 2024 social media planner and guide. This is the 2023 one. I'm just holding it up here, which is obviously nearly finished now. So my 2024 social media planner and guide is for coaches, consultants, and online experts. It's a guide which is packed full of just all the advice that I've spoken about here in this podcast. But there's over 100 ideas for social media content. And then there's 400 prompts for special days. So for every day of the year, we have a special day. So those special days just keep you turning up more consistently on social media if you're just looking for inspiration. So the whole idea is with the special days is that you still have to link them back to your business goals, your core messages, and think about your ideal client. But if you think about, let's say, some examples would be like World Diabetes Day, or National Recycling Day, or National Homemade Brown Bread Day, or International Men's Day, or World Children's Day. Again, you think about those days and you go, okay, how can I make those relevant to my business?
Yeah.
Because on those days, you'll have journalists and DJs from different stations, radio stations, potentially looking for content around those days. And the chances are those hashtags will be trending on those days. And they just give you those dates, and special days just give you inspiration. So that planner is for sale on Amazon, and you can buy it anywhere in the world on Amazon. And it'll really help you save you time and help you show up more consistently in 2024.
Sure. So for the links and resources mentioned in this episode, check out the show notes at www.petersgroup.com/podcast, where we'll link up to the social media content planner on Amazon and also to your website directly. Let's close with the 4 rapid fire questions. Are you ready?
Oh, goodness. I am.
Number 1, a book that changed your life.
Oh, goodness gracious, a book that changed my life. I can't remember the name of it. I'm reading it at the moment. It's Sharon Lecter.
What is it? What is the topic of the book?
No, I'll find it right now. Napoleon Hill.
Oh,
Outwitting the Devil.
that's a good one. Number 2, a piece of advice you got that you'll never forget.
Oh, when you get a message, take it.
Yeah, strong one. Number 3, anything you wish you could go back and do differently.
Yes. I think by my nature, I like to learn everything myself. I think if I was giving advice to my younger self, I would have said join masterminds, sign up to programs a lot earlier on in my career, because it really helps you to fast track your progress.
Absolutely. Last and final question. What's still on your bucket list to achieve? Could be a business goal as well.
On my bucket list to achieve. I'd love to speak at the Social Media World Summit in
Oh,
San
that's a good one. Okay. Thank you so much for joining us. I know your time is valuable. That is why, in the name of our listeners, we'll forever be grateful for sharing some of your time with us today. It's been a blast.
Oh, thank you.
My pleasure.